In the 2021 NFL Draft, the 49ers were at a crossroads. They had a Super Bowl quality roster, but were missing a quarterback who could really push them across the finish line. 2020 had been a huge downswing in their potential. They had decent success, but knew that a true star at quarterback was the difference between a bubble playoff team and a Super Bowl contender. When the draft was approaching, they traded their first-round picks in 2021, 2022, and 2023 to move up on the board and get the QB of their dreams. However, many analysts were forced to scratch their head and wonder what the Niners were thinking when they took Trey Lance with the pick. It wasn't that Trey Lance had a bad college career at North Dakota, but it was clear he was going to be a project quarterback who needed a lot of time to develop. This didn't really make sense with the 49ers' current situation, as they were in a position to win now with an improvement at quarterback. At this point in 2024, it's clear that Trey Lance is a draft bust. Any QB who was taken this high in the draft and never really had a starting career is certainly a disappointment for the draft room that selected him. But what was it about Trey Lance that has made his career such a disaster so far? Today on FootballLore, we explore the tragic story of Trey Lance's career. Trey Lance does have an insane natural athletic ability, but playing against FCS schools allowed him to pull off plays and maneuvers that were just not going to work in the NFL. It made for a great highlight reel for scouts to get excited over, but it wasn't like he was ever going to be able to pull that off at the next level. This led to a huge amount of hype being placed on someone who wasn't ready for the NFL. I don't blame Trey Lance for making the jump to the league. As a top 5 pick and a quarterback, he was set to make tens of millions of dollars no matter how his career went. It would have been a bad business move to not make the leap when his draft stock was at its absolute peak, but it is head-scratching more scouts didn't notice the obvious. The sheer lack of Trey Lance's college experience is best outlined with his college career stats. Someone like Peyton Manning attempted over 1,300 passes through his college career. Trey Lance threw just 318 passes in the FCS division. Sure, the tape might have looked impressive, but there really was just not enough proof of his ability to guarantee him being a great NFL prospect. I'm not trying to crap all over the FCS and say only the Big Ten and SEC can make good prospects. I'm just saying pulling someone who had one great year out of the FCS is a big gamble. This isn't someone who carried North Dakota to 4 straight national titles in dominant fashion. This is someone who had a great year as a college quarterback. He even played just one game in 2020 due to the pandemic. In that game, he threw for just 150 yards with an interception and 2 touchdowns. There is no exact science when it comes to evaluating a draft pick, and even the most surefire things can bust. However, the general rule of thumb is that for NFL prospects, you want to see at least 2 years as a starter with 900 pass attempts. Trey Lance had the sample size of a Baskin-Robbins sample spoon and still became a top 3 pick. I think he went this high purely because the teams were buying into the hype and it became an arms race. There is no doubt that Trey Lance could have been an elite QB if he had been given proper development conditions, but I do think without the hype, he could have been a late 2nd or early 3rd round pick with the same result. Every team was sitting there watching tape, imagining what he could be 5 years from now under perfect conditions, not what he was. And I get it, the draft is about drafting players who you think can boost your team and develop over time. However, expecting someone to go from great FCS quarterback to elite NFL quarterback in a single season is unrealistic. Trey Lance has incredible speed, a cannon for an arm, and an ability to create plays when things break down. I understand why teams thought he could be a great weapon, but a top 3 pick was a giant reach. Even going into his rookie season, it should have been a red flag that the 49ers decided to stick with Jimmy Garoppolo instead of their shiny new top 3 pick. He went into his rookie year as a backup, and yes, we knew he would be a project, but allegedly it wasn't even a close battle. The few games he started his rookie year were okay, but it was clear that the speed of the NFL game was not something he was used to. He had a touchdown in his first appearance, but appeared to be over-reliant on mobility to make plays happen. Mobility is something quarterbacks really need to use sparingly. It is a huge asset, but it also is a huge risk. Someone like Lance was used to trying to make plays on his feet, but this led to a lot more hits being racked up on his body. He wasn't used to the game enough to sit in the pocket and make his reads, and it led to him being on the receiving end of a lot of hard hits. This game came to a head in his rookie season when he suffered a sprained knee in week 6. After the end of his rookie campaign, he attempted 71 passes with 41 completions for 600 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. He had another 168 yards on the ground, but left a lot of fans somewhat disappointed with his on-the-field play. However, some people were holding out hope that he would be able to show what he could really do in his sophomore season. He had shown some promise in his rookie year, and usually we see a huge jump in production the second year as they adjust to the speed of the NFL game. Theoretically, he should have taken the field in 2022 and blown everyone out of the water, but that isn't really what happens. He did manage to win the starting job in 2022, which I have to give him credit for. Even if he is a bust, beating out other quarterbacks for a starting job in the NFL isn't easy. However, he played just one full game. It was a disappointing 13 for 28 passes, for 164 yards and an interception. You simply can't call yourself a mobile, explosive quarterback and put up so few yards, especially against a team most people considered a joke. When he was on the field, he just looked wildly uncomfortable. It seemed like all of the confidence he had played with at North Dakota had been obliterated. He was making throws he really just shouldn't have, often throwing into double coverage or to receivers simply not in a position to make a play. It was clear that the 300 career passing attempts he had before jumping to the NFL had not been enough to make him an NFL caliber player. He also didn't seem to break his habit of opening up to hits he shouldn't, and this would spell disaster in week 2 of his second season. Against the Seahawks, Lance suffered a season-ending ankle injury that would require multiple surgeries, obviously multiple injuries, and now surgeries for a mobile quarterback did not do a lot to make the 49ers front office swell with confidence. He had already struggled a lot to adjust to the NFL, but now he was going to be missing an entire season, and then was going to have to come back from injury. That was clearly going to affect his play style. The writing was on the wall that at this point the thought of Trey Lance being a Mecca, Michael Vick were gone. It also didn't help that after he was injured, Garoppolo went down and Brock Purdy stepped in and played like an all-star. It says a lot that a top 3 pick in his second year wouldn't be able to carry the team the same way the last pick in the 2022 draft could. Brock Purdy went from Mr. Irrelevant to beating out 2 quarterbacks for the starting job. When Brock Purdy successfully was able to carry the 49ers to the conference championship, it was clear he was going to be the future of the franchise. They had to pay him under $1 million a year, and he didn't seem to be injury prone the same way Lance was. It's hard to say if Lance truly was a fragile player, or if his play style just didn't do him any favors in the NFL. You can tank a lot of hits on the college level. It's not a good idea, but you can. The way he would put his body on the line in the NFL is probably most of the reason he didn't get any more time. It was also clear the 49ers were not in a position to commit to a project quarterback. They had made back-to-back NFC Conference Championship appearances without Lance starting. They were in their Super Bowl window and didn't have 2 more seasons to attempt the Trey Lance project. This should have been obvious to most scouts, and maybe if he had gone to a team that had more time to work on a project, his fate would have been different. I don't think it made a difference. It would have been the same result in my opinion. I just don't think he was ready to go to the NFL. Coming into the 2023 season, I think all of Trey Lance's confidence was shattered. He wasn't even able to win the backup job despite having several years of knowing the offense. When you are losing backup jobs to Sam Darnold, you know that things are not going well for your career. The contract Trey Lance was on was pretty large, and it didn't make sense for the Niners to pay a third-string quarterback that type of money. It also didn't help that the fans didn't feel bought into the project either. By the time the 2023 season rolled around, most fans in San Francisco were perfectly fine with moving on to Brock Purdy. He didn't have the status as a fan favorite, and when the Cowboys offered a 4th-round pick for Lance, it was a no-brainer for San Francisco. Just 3 years into his NFL career, the former top 3 pick was traded for a single 4th rounder, which shows just how little any other teams thought this project was going to work. If after 2 years no teams even were willing to take him on as a project for more than a mid-round draft pick, it shows that all of the scouts who thought he was the next Michael Vick were delusional. I get that most draft picks are not going to work out, but it really wasn't. Since Josh Rosen, we saw someone get chewed up and spit out so quickly after being such a high draft pick. The Cowboys did see some potential in Lance, but he wasn't able to even get on the field for them. It wasn't until this last preseason we saw him in a Cowboys uniform, and he wasn't able to win the backup job in Dallas. Realistically, being a backup in Dallas would have been perfect for him. He can play a similar game to Dak Prescott and be a threat in special packages. Yet even in this perfect situation, he lost out to Cooper Rush for a backup job. When the Cowboys coach Mike McCarthy was talking about benching Lance, he summarized it best. He's just got to continue to develop. You can see the things he's really focused on, the concept footwork and things like that. He got better each week in the preseason. Great job extending plays with his legs. Made some plays in the quarterback run phase. Just trying to continue that drop back passing. He's making strides. The preseason, I don't know that there's anyone on our team who benefited more from the preseason than Trey Lance. When even your own coach thinks you have a long way to go coming into another NFL season, it shows you really aren't adjusting to the game. The Cowboys also declined to pick up his 5th-year option, which means he's going to be testing free agency at the end of the year. I think he does have a future in the NFL, but mostly as a practice squad or niche use quarterback. I could see him being used in special packages for teams who don't have a mobile quarterback, or maybe even being a solid backup somewhere with a mobile QB. However, unless he can pull off a miracle and take the Cowboys to the playoffs, I just don't think he is going to be making a return to the starting quarterback position in the NFL. What's most weird about Lance is that most busts have done something to make it their fault they don't succeed. I think in this case, he just should have never been a first-round pick in the first place. If he had been a second, third, or even 4th-round pick, nobody would have had sky-high expectations for him in the first place. He was drafted in the middle of a frenzy where everyone was drafting him based on his hypothetical ability instead of the ability he had shown in college. I can't blame someone for making the jump and getting a $35 million contract, but realistically, he should have never been as hyped as he was. Who knows what could have happened if he had gone somewhere with more realistic expectations? The world will never know what could have been. Overall, I think this just goes to show that NFL scouts don't always know what they're talking about. The draft is literally always a gamble, and more times than not, you are going to end up disappointed. However, situations like this make you have to scratch your head and wonder how they ever thought this was going to work out in the first place. He had nowhere near enough experience in college to have been as hyped as he was, and a lot of his special plays showed signs he was not going to adjust to the NFL well. Someone with bad fundamentals dunking on FCS schools is not a reason to give them the franchise quarterback crown. Unfortunately, the odds are we are just a few years out from another player who receives this level of hype and goes down as a bust. The player I think he reminds me of the most is Akili Smith, who was equally athletic but just not ready for the NFL. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a comment and press the like button. It helps the video do better in the algorithm, and we are trying to hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. We post 3 football videos a week, so if you enjoy this type of content, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another video. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a good season.